Hey Grace Church, hope your week is going well. This week for the Thursday newsletter, I want to talk just a minute about what it takes for God to soften and mold our hearts together, or mold our hearts towards a direction that He wants us to go and do what He do what He wants us to do. I've been reading you can see that, the Who's Your One, the 30-day devotional that we were able to pick up at church. And on day two, one of the passages just stuck out at me as the devotional required us to think about somebody who we could share the gospel with. And this is out of Ezekiel. This particular passage was out of Ezekiel chapter 11. I'm going to read it out of the NIV here, but this is Ezekiel chapter 11, verses 19 to 20. And listen about the consequences of a soft, or what the author says is a fleshy heart. God says this: I will give them an undivided heart and put a new spirit in them. I will remove from them their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. Then they will follow me, they will follow my decrees and be very careful to keep my laws. They will be my people, and I will be their God. What a beautiful passage. What we see when we read Ezekiel is that a heart of flesh, a soft heart, will allow us to follow the decrees, the laws of God. And there's something similar said about that in Psalm 119. Psalm 119, if you've not read it before, I encourage you to go to it. Take your time going through it. It takes days to go through Psalm 119. It's pretty long. It's the longest psalm in the book of Psalms, and but there's a lot in there. Listen for this. This is out of verses 10 and 11. Listen for the positive, or the positive consequences of knowing God's word. And remember, this whole idea of softening and having this fleshy heart, as Ezekiel talked about. This is Psalm 119, verses 10 through 11. And the author says this. He says, I seek you with all my heart. Do not let me stray from your commands. In verse 11, I've hidden your word in my heart, that I might not sin against you. So did you hear that? Having a soft heart, a heart bent towards God, it's a heart that knows God's word. So having a soft heart, having this fleshy heart that Ezekiel talked about, a heart that's moldable like clay, requires God's word. So sharing the gospel requires us knowing God's word. Following God's direction means we got to know God's word. We got to know about what it says and which way He wants us to go, what He wants us to do. Getting peace in life, getting rid of anxiety, letting that go, requires knowing and having and keeping God's word in our heart. Loving other people, not just saying you love them, but loving other people the way that Christ does, requires knowing God's word. So, knowing God's word will soften our heart and make it moldable by God, to make us into the person He wants us to be, to shape our heart, to create a new heart inside of us. So this Valentine's Day, make a commitment to know God's word. Make a commitment to know God's word, so that He can soften your heart and mold it. All right, Grace Church, listen, I'm looking forward to seeing you on Sunday, and I'll see you there. Have a great rest of the week.